Space Marines are the Emperor's angels of death, created to fight an endless war across the stars against the limitless enemies of the Imperium. Over the last 10 millennia, there have been thousands of heroes of different worlds, but one amongst them stands out. Commander Dante, Chapter Master of the Blood Angels, holds the title of the oldest living Space Marine, with an active record of over 1,500 years of combat with the Sons of Sanguinius. In this video, we're going to dive deep on the life of one of the most remarkable Chapter Masters of one of the original 20 Legions. Also, we're going to explore another question that has loomed over the minds of many an 8th edition Warhammer 40,000 player, and that is, where exactly are the Blood Angels? For those that aren't current with the lore as it evolves during the Vigilus campaign, Abaddon has set foot on the planet of Vigilus. This is the last bastion between Imperium Nihilus and the main Imperium via one of the only stable routes between the two, the Noctman Gauntlet. After the opening of the Great Rift and the galaxy split asunder, Vigilus has been a hotly contested planet. Let's crack open that sweet, sweet nut that is Commander Dante and go into where exactly the Blood Angels are in the lore right now. As a whole, the Blood Angels have always been held in high esteem by the people of the Imperium. During the time of Sanguinius, many saw the Primarch as an outward extension of the nobility of the Legion, as well as the righteousness of the Great Crusade. That imagery has not been tarnished going into the depths of the Dark Millennium we currently reside in. Commander Dante stands out as a paragon of the virtues set out by Sanguinius, and so great are his deeds that they outnumber those of entire chapters in the latter foundings of this era. But that was not always so. Just as every other Space Marine, Dante was once but a mere mortal. Born to the second moon of Baal Secundus, to a man named Arius, Luis has known hardship since his early years. Luis is Dante's personal name, and Dante is his angel name, quote-unquote. The angel name is typically what most people are referred by, but Luis's people prefer their personal name. It's kind of like the same thing as like a baptismal name is the way you could look at it, Dante, his angel name. You see, Baal Secundus is irradiated more so than its sister moon or adjoining planet. Fighting through radiation and vicious mutated monstrosities that stalk the land, the people of Baal Secundus are forced to live a defensive life from their own home, threatening to kill them. Not unlike living in the deep south where a mosquito bite makes you want to eat your neighbor in bath salts. Never forget bath salts. But after his mother's death at the age of 7, Luis took to the open wasteland on a quest to become Angel. People of Baal, unlike a lot of other recruiting planets, know well the legacy of their Space Marine masters. Traveling far and into the Great Salt Wastes, Luis lived off the land, scavenging and hunting where he could. The extreme radiation pockmarked the boy's face, giving him the telltale signs of radiation sickness that has plagued the rest of the populace of the planet. Ever onward he trekked, though, the place of choosing, a distant location that Baalites must sojourn to hope to be included into the ranks of the Adeptus Astartes. As you would have imagined, making a journey through a gigantic, irradiated, and wild beast-filled desert often leads to water being a scarcity. Collapsing from exhaustion and dehydration, Luis almost lost his life, if it were not for the timely visit of an angel clad in golden armor with brilliant white wings. That being then gave young Luis water, who in turn lapped it up like a shot luge on spring break. But this marks the first of 4 visits that Dante would come to have throughout his life by the being known as the Sanguinor. Sanguinor deserves his own video to properly expand on. But in short, he is a mysterious figure that arrives in times of dire need for the Blood Angels, or those that play a grand part in the future of the chapter, so successor chapters and such. He's believed to be a portion of Sanguinius' own will, but there are a number of other prevailing theories, especially now more so as the Horus Heresy has kind of come to unfold, that we can get into at another time. Rejuvenated, Luis made his way to the place of choosing. This location is far from where Luis grew up and came to adolescence in the Great Salt Wastes. Angel's Fall is the location that Sanguinius fell to Baal Secundus, and as thus is the location where all aspiring Space Marines of Baal Secundus must travel to. One amongst 500, Luis was not the biggest, and by far not the strongest. Growing up in the irradiated wasteland of his youth and the malnourishment had stunted the boy's growth. What Luis did have was a remarkable amount of perseverance, a trait that would continue to his days as the chapter master of the Blood Angels. Indeed, there are even a number of instances where Luis straight messes up his trials. I mean, called the first and second winnowing, he drops his scanner in quicksand, and a number of other mishaps where luck really plays their hand to deliver the boy all the way to the place of challenge and his first real physical test, the trial of war. A massive team engagement, Luis's true qualities shone through in his peerless ability to lead and command teams in the thick of battle, even in a trial such as this. This trait, along with his morality and tenacity, became the defining characteristics of the warrior that would become Dante. Appalled at the wanton slaughter of other aspirants as a means of selection, final physical test, the final choosing as it is named, not really a very intuitive name, was also called the Test of Horus. Luis was pitted against his closest friend, Florian, in single combat. The overseeing chaplain told Luis to throw away all tenets of brotherhood and camaraderie, to slay Florian for the perceived greater good of the Imperium. Other Blood Angels egged Luis on, assuring him that this would mark him for greatness amongst the chapter. After defeating Florian, but before killing him, Luis tossed his weapon aside, admonishing someone as terrifying as a chaplain, a giant black wall of ceramite with a skull helmet that is always yelling. Anyway, moving on. This test of Horus was to mirror the same tempting that not only Horus delivered to Sanguinius, but the temptation that all traitor legions fell victim to, the murder of their brothers for some greater power over all. What makes this a particularly interesting trial is that not many other chapters talk about having a trial just like this. It's something I find quite interesting. It's more ingrained to never betray a brother than to actually put that indoctrination to the test. The entire reason the overseeing chaplain gives the order to kill Luis's brother is to mirror the duplicity of the Horus heresy. It's a stroke of genius built into the loyalty and moral compass of the chapter itself that I really enjoy. The very last test is the Winnowing of Weariness, wherein aspirants have to take a long vigil without falling asleep. Luis, in an act of pure, tenacious glory and direct vindication towards his desired position as a Space Marine, fell asleep, thus failing the test. Before anyone could catch on, the Sanguinor, marking the second visit to Luis, woke him up. And as Luis was implanted with the gene seed and drank Sanguinius' blood from the blood chalice, he underwent the blood change. This is a grueling, year-long period in which an aspirant slumbers, entombed within a sarcophagus. Now, this is generally a hectic time, with some aspirants succumbing to the Black Rage or showing signs of early degradation. Luis saw visions of Sanguinius' life, his death, events of the early Legion, all the while railing madly in his sarcophagus. Drifting in and out of consciousness, Luis's body remade itself as it absorbed the gene seed of Sanguinius. His earlier imperfections and stunted physical appearance was reborn in the image of a scion of the great angel. He saw dark gods, breathed the names of Primarchs long gone, and saw terrifying demons that were banished by his sire many millennia ago. So great was his transformation and torment that he was even able to lift the sealed lid of his sarcophagus. After the year was up, the sanguinary priests were sure that Luis had fallen deep into the twin curses of the Primarch. As the sarcophagus door was lifted, out stepped Dante, the reborn Luis, perfectly composed and in control of his mind. This was seen as a marking of greatness, since he had faced many terrors of the bloodline and beaten them back in the first year alone. Now, Dante's years as a Space Marine are marred with outstanding engagements, such as the Second War of Armageddon, the Gehenna Campaign, and of course, the devastation of Baal during the Third Tyrannic War. But every great commander must start out as a scout. As a scout in the year 467 in the Millennium 440, Dante fought his 23rd engagement against orcs on the ash wastes of Rora. Progressing through the ranks, Dante witnessed the Black Rage in full effect, or for the first time really, as a battle brother, or that's a full Space Marine, in the year 518, Millennium 40, on the hive world of Tobias Halt. And we don't know exactly what year Dante became the Sergeant of Squad Dante, but he became captain of the Blood Angels 5th Company after the death of his predecessor, Captain Avernus. And Dante's ascent to Chapter Master is told through two different stories with their fair share of canon conflicts, the Callius Insurrection and the Sicoris Disaster. Both have similar outcomes with the same result, of course, Dante becoming the chapter master. In my opinion, the Sicoris disaster has been retconned throughout the years, and the Callias insurrection is the real deal. So we'll go with that. Really, like I said, though, there's not much difference between these two. I guess in the Sicoris disaster, it's not evident that Dante becomes the master, and there's less surviving Blood Angels. But the Callias one is the one that has been told in more of the recent lore, so that's what I will say is quote-unquote canon. But sometime in the years 900 to 999, Millennium 40, the Blood Angels respond to a distress call from the embattled Angels Numinous, a successor chapter of the Blood. In a campaign that spanned multiple years, the Blood Angels tried to shut down a massive rebellion across the sector, and it cost the chapter dearly as their forces were dragged through prolonged engagements from sieges to trench warfare. The Blood Angels sustained casualties far above what they could sustain and still be considered combat effective. And as a relief, forces of both Imperial Guard and other Space Marine chapters entered the system, the Blood Angels were pinned by a traitor armada that broke warp at the Blood Angels' point of exit. Caught in a solar war that lasted 3 days, Dante's company was responsible for overtaking multiple capital ships and leading heroic boarding actions. By the end of the entire campaign, a mere 200 Blood Angels remained alive. That's 20%. The other 80 gone, with almost the entire Council of the Blood being killed. Dante was the last line officer in the chapter and was appointed Lord Commander and Chapter Master by the remaining sanguinary priests and chaplains. And this really fits heavily into the theme of Dante's life. He's not really the best Space Marine, and that's a pretty big distinction to make. Dante dodges that Mary Sue title so well because he is a flawed Space Marine. It is not the pinnacle of leadership, swordsmanship, and every other ship that most main characters usually are in the 40k universe. Rather, he is someone that fails repeatedly, but his tenacity is what pushes him to the top. And, well, maybe his kind of like being touched by the hand of Sanguinius thing, but whatever. He even goes as far as to refuse drinking blood, looking at it as abhorrent and a direct counter to the ideology set out by Sanguinius. It's a very Warhammer Fantasy Abhorresh kind of role that he assumes almost in some regard. But as the Lord of Angelic Hosts, Dante served in so many engagements that it's hard to really keep track. I mean, even Captain Lysander remarks that he does not remember a time when Dante was not Chapter Master of the Blood Angels. Captain Lysander is a captain of the Imperial Fists. For the last 1600 years of his service, Dante has led the Blood Angels to a level of glory reserved for times far beyond the current era, into the 30th millennium, or I say, not beyond, but previously. His many campaigns are too many to list in this video, but one I do really want to talk about is the Gehenna Campaign. Not even so much for the events of the campaign itself, but rather the wide-spanning implications that it has brought to the table since it has become fleshed out. In short, the Blood Angels were fighting the Necrons in the Gehenna system before allying together to defeat a Tyranid splinter fleet that attacked the system. There was an exchange with the leader of the Necrons, the Silent King Zarek, and Dante that's particularly poignant. The Silent King is supposed to be the ruler of all Necrons, but he's old, like really, really old. Older than the Emperor of Man old. He predates even the Eldar to the time known as the War in Heaven, when the Catan and Necrontyr fought the Old Ones. You can imagine this guy has seen some shit, including the Galactic Void being filled with Tyranids. Now, during their meeting, Dante is originally appalled by the sight of Zarek, as he's wearing a mask of Sanguinius. Zarek's herald tells Dante that there was an alliance of sorts between Zarek and Sanguinius, and the Necron was actually quite fond of the Great Angel. The mask isn't made in mockery, it's actually made in an almost perfect presentation of the magnificence of Sanguinius. Dante remarks that his death mask is a snarling visage of anger, while Zarek's shows the noble and royal countenance of the Father of the Blood, with a veneration and regality that his own mask doesn't even touch. It's a pretty tender moment between two races that have been pitted against one another for, time immemorial between these two. But like I said, it also opens the door to a lot of theories. Zarek seems to imply that he was a firm acquaintance of Sanguinius, and that Sanguinius would have made a better leader of men than the current half-dead quote-unquote witch emperor. Either way, the ending of the campaign has the two forces leave system without any hostilities after they defeat the Tyranids, and it is one of the more remarkable campaigns that Dante has taken part in. With that being said, all of Dante's campaigns would pale in comparison to a major prophecy known as the Golden Warrior Prophecy. Sanguinius, as a highly psychic Primarch, was granted visions of the future. Winning Imperial lottery numbers, the outcomes of battle, and the current state of the Imperium as it is. One such vision, recorded in the Scrolls of Sanguinius, tells of a lone golden warrior who would stand between the Emperor of Mankind and his destruction. This vision is recorded before the fall of Sanguinius to Horus, and his vision might even be referring to Sanguinius himself against Horus. But Dante has always believed himself to be that lone golden warrior, a theory or premonition that has been granted credence across the many tumultuous moments of his life, from his early days as an aspirant to the most recent lore when he almost died to a one-on-one duel with a hive tyrant during the devastation of Baal, in the Third Tyrannic Wars. Dante was granted a vision by the Sanguinor and Sanguinius, urging him onward, and that his duty is not yet fulfilled, kind of really solidifying this theory for him. The closing moments of the Third Tyrannic Wars saw Dante kneeling before Robert Guilliman, which ultimately paved the road for the Dante as we see him in the current era. Lord Commander Dante, Lord of the Angelic Hosts, and Regent of the Imperium Nihilus. But the last we see of Dante is his pledge to purge his new realm of the taint of chaos, and he has been shockingly absent from the Vigilus Defiant / Vigilus Ablaze portion of the lore. So where does that put the wayward Regent in this extreme time of crisis? I have a number of theories. First, let's take stock of the results of the Tyrannic Wars, and the Chapters of the Blood as they are so called. At the end of the devastation of Baal, there is a rolling tally of chapters that are completely annihilated, such as the Knights of the Blood, or chapters that are well under strength, with only handfuls left, such as the Carmine Blades. Belarius Kral and Guilliman replenish all of the losses, even bolstering chapters that were already reduced in number with a large contingent of Primaris Space Marines. Creating some new all-Primaris chapters as well, the Blood Angels are back up to their full strength. As the story stands, Vigilus Ablaze is the last we know of the ongoing 8th edition storyline at the time of this video's posting. Dante is out fighting some crusade, I guess, to eradicate chaos, and Abaddon is giving the Claw of Horus to Vigilus. In the coming months, I expect a story to extend to the Baal system, to not only further the grand narrative, but allow the region of the Imperium Nihilus to come to the fore once more. But let's kind of go into why that is. The Warhammer community site released a picture not too long ago showing the regions that the grand 8th edition narrative would eventually spread to. Now, as we look at this picture, a number of planets stand out. Terra in the upper left, which, could be argued to be actually Macragge, but that's where this all started, so that doesn't make a lot of sense that that'd be Macragge. We have Mars in the bottom center, but the real one I want to draw your attention to is the red planet at the upper right, or upper right center. That looks shockingly similar to Baal with one of its twin moons, with a second barely visible towards the bottom of the shot. This leads me to believe that Abaddon is either going to move from Vigilus to Baal, or he has a second force, comprised of demons under Kabanda attacking Baal perhaps, but that is maybe a little too trite, or too easy. Let's take a look at some facts from another Legion of Angels, the Dark Angels. The final entry of the timeline of the Dark Angels in the 8th edition Codex, titled The Darkest Angels, gives us a pretty grim outlining of what is going on in the Nihilist sector by the Dark Angel standards. It explicitly mentions a gathering of many of the Fallen in Legion-sized numbers that would bring the galaxy to heel. With the focus to Fallen being brought to light again in Vigilus Ablaze, and new rules extending to them, this might be the second arm of Abaddon's plan, using the Fallen to assault Baal and keep Dante at bay. Which leads me to a second reveal from the very same book. The very last portion, titled The Last Secret, talks about how the lion has fully recovered from his wounds and lies in wait at the bottom of the rock. For the right moment, like every other fucking Primarch. But this is, of course, not terribly new lore, but I for one would love to see a moment where the rock takes the fight to the Fallen, traversing the Nachmung Gauntlet to help the Blood Angels defend Baal with a newly risen Lionel Johnson. With so many of the Fallen in the Imperium Nihilus, possibly being led by Luther or someone of that magnitude such as Cypher, although I think that Cypher has a grander role to play on the side of the Imperium, not Chaos, it makes total sense that we would see the Lion rise to bring his fallen sons to heel, helping to cleanse the Legion from their secrets and sins. Guilliman rules the Imperium, and the lion rules Imperium Nihilus, hunting the fallen. That's how I kind of see things playing out. Either way, the Blood Angels are desperately in need of a refresh across their entire special character model range. Perhaps we'll see Dante emerge with the Primaris treatment, such in the same way we saw for Marneus Calgar. Mephiston, Lamardus, and Dante are amongst the 3 most popular characters of the chapter when it comes to their placement in tabletop tournaments and Maelstrom play. It stands to reason that we would see these 3 rebooted with models on a scale that befits the newer, larger scale of Warhammer 40k. Please keep in mind, though, that a lot of this is speculation and theorizing. We don't have a concrete idea of what's going to go on because Games Workshop is an agent of Tzeentch, and their narratives don't always align. I would argue, though, that in recent years, Games Workshop has strived to clean up a lot of their tangled lore in lieu of a more concise narrative, thus allowing us the opportunity to sort of guess the direction of 8th edition lore in a better fashion than we have been able to in previous years. No matter how you cut it, the world-weary Dante will be in the center of the conflict to come. Whether it reaches Baal, extends to Terra, and the Golden Warrior prophecy is fulfilled, or Dante descends upon wings of fire on another planet to help the Imperium. The oldest active space marine in the Imperium will always be there at the forefront of the battle, acting as a bastion against the darkness, ready to bring the fury of Sanguinius to those that would stand against the Sons of the Blood. I hope you enjoyed this video here today, and it brought up a lot of fun theories in your mind for where the Blood Angels are during the 8th edition narrative. We'll hopefully be seeing a continuation of that narrative throughout the summer, as Games Workshop tends to focus heavily on summer campaigns for both Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.